Commissioner Salmieri,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Gaida,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Ma,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Cairn,
Here.
Commissioner Tedesco, Commissioner Sewell,
Yes.
Commissioner Coles,
Present.
Commissioner Britton,
Here.
Commissioner Chaplinsky,
Here.
Vice Chair Walowski,
Here.
and Chair Hammersley.
Hammers is here. Commissioner Tedesco isn't with us currently, so we'll seek Commissioner Keard in his place. With that, we have a quorum. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could all remain standing for a moment of silent reflection, please. All right, thank you. Looking for a motion to approve our minutes from our last meeting of November 5th, 2024. Commissioner Walowski,
Make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
Second.
second Commissioner Britton. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner discussion, anything for anyone to bring up? No? Okay. So it falls on me under item number 8. I'll just say for anyone in the audience who's here for the Lazy Lane application, the applicant sent us a late notice asking that that be tabled. So we're going to do that. That will be heard at our next meeting on December 3rd. So if you're here for that, feel free to leave. I mean, you're welcome to stay, but you don't have to if you don't want to as well. So I don't want you to sit through something and then find out that the one that you're here for is going to be taken up. So, and with that, I'll just read our preamble. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Southington Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Bob Hammersley. I'm the chair of the commission. And I'd like to take a few moments to explain the meeting format. Aside from administrative items, most of which we've just gone through, tonight's meeting is comprised of two parts, a public hearing and a business meeting. During the public hearing, the applicant will present the application to us in detail, which will allow the commission members and the public the opportunity to better understand what is being proposed. The commission members may ask questions during the presentation if needed, and then we'll ask members of the public to testify in support or in opposition to the application. We'll have an opportunity to speak. If you wish to speak, just raise your hand. I'll recognize you. Come up to the podium here. Give us your name and address, just so we have that for the record. Please address any and all comments to myself and through me. Do not address them to the applicant. I'll be taking notes up here, and we'll ask the applicant. We'll have an opportunity after everyone has testified. We'll have an opportunity to come up here and respond to those questions as well as any additional questions from the commission members. Be advised that this is your opportunity to ask questions and make comments on an application, because once a public hearing is closed, no additional testimony from the public or the applicant is permitted. It's important to maintain order and decorum at all times, and as I said, please direct your questions or comments through myself, just in order to keep things in an orderly manner. After everyone's had a full opportunity to speak, all questions have been answered, and all information has been received in the commission's opinion, we'll decide whether it's appropriate to close a hearing, and we will not consider voting on any application until the business meeting portion of the agenda. During that portion of the agenda, the commission will deliberate on an application submitted to the commission and decide how to act. At that point, there is no input that's allowed from anyone outside of the seated commission members up here. The commission may do one of four things with regards to any application. One is to approve an application as submitted. Two is to approve it with stipulations, conditions, or modifications. Three is to table it for a future meeting. And in some cases, we may deny an application. 4 affirmative votes are generally required to approve any application. If you have to leave the meeting before a decision is rendered, please feel free to contact the planning department, Dave LaValle, at the end, anytime after tomorrow afternoon, and he can let you know what the outcome of whatever you're calling about is. And with that, we'll move into the public hearing portion. Item 9A and 9B, the applicant again has asked for a tabling on that. Can we get a motion to table, please?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to table ZC 579 and SPU 707.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Sewell with a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9C, proposed zone text amendment for revision to Section 4 of the zoning regulations, special zones. This proposal includes adding Section 4I titled Special Design Mixed Use Zone to provide retail, service, residential, and professional office uses in locations close to a limited access highway or arterial roads in a manner which ensures public safety. I think that's supposed to be some public safety, this is public safely, and compatibility with surrounding uses. This is Zone Amendment 618. Mr. Bravino, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening.
Can you get a little closer to the mic set, please?
Good evening. My name is Sev Bovino, planner with Kratzer Johnson Associates, represented the applicant. Myself and other clients, they own property in the area of proposed floating zones. The proposed floating zones are in front of you tonight. The proposed floating zones are located on Queen Street, starting at the Plainville Town Line up to River Street. On the screen here, this is Town Line, Plainville Town Line. So Queen Street proceeds south, and so it goes to River Street, which is just about right here. There's a few properties here. To the right of the screen, you'll see photos of the properties. Maybe we should close the light. Okay, you can see better.
Thanks, Lou.
So I have the photos of the properties here to the right with the leader to the actual property. The shape of the property is right there. So you see the type of structures that we have along Queen Street here. Here's one existing one with upstairs, space upstairs. They currently have some antique stores there. And as you go down, we have this 1079 Queen Street. It has an upstairs which is vacant. To the other side of the street, there's, I believe, only one property, which is the bar that has an upstairs. I believe it's this photo's right here. Then we have Meriden Woodbury Road that starts at the Rail-to Trail. This is the east end of Meriden Woodbury Road. This is Old Turnpike right here. And the idea is to start over here with this property. This property has an upstairs. This is a restaurant, which it doesn't qualify. Not all the photos represent properties that qualify for this text amendment. I took the pictures to give you a sense what the properties look like and the mixed use that already exist in this area. So you go from Old Turnpike heading west, and you see the type of properties that you have here. As I said, some of these don't qualify. This has an upstairs. This is a two-family. Here's a bike shop as an upstairs. This is an office, and then it's single families. This is business with an upstairs. I believe it's an apartment there. So as you can see, there's a mixed use already on the strip, same way as on that end of Queen Street. This building has an upstairs, but doesn't qualify because it was not constructed prior to 1990. The regulation talks about 1990 and prior. This is the corner of Meriden Woodbury Road and Clark Street. There's the house is still there. The rest of the buildings have been removed. Then here's the Manor Inn restaurant. And basically that's the end of the strip. These are pictures of properties, how they could look like if they were rehabbed, removed and reconstructed. You have a business on the bottom with residential on top. Same thing here. This is across the Kennedy School. We have a jewelry store here with a living space above. Those are some of the ideas. These are the same pictures taken a different day with a different light. As you can see, you can have this kind of building with business on the bottom and residential on top, or something like this. And these kind of, that's from Westbrook, Clinton area. This one is in Plainville. So this is my statement here, and then you have the regulations. That's the section 4I added to the regulation, and then you have the language, the various portion of the language. And at the end, we have a couple of letters of support in a different place. So I go over my presentation, but I want to give you a brief introduction there. Again, on Queen Street is from Plainville Town Line to River Street. On Meriden Waterbury Road is from the Railroad Bridge to Old Turnpike. The extent of these areas is subject to the commission discretion. You can restrict them, make them smaller or larger. These areas and the text language can be made more restrictive by the commission if so desired. The floating zones are called special design mixed-use zone. We worked with staff in formulating the text change language and the structure of the text change. If this is approved, it gives owners one more option for development. It doesn't preclude any of the current regulation to be applied to the property. It's a B zone, so all the current allowed uses will stay, will not change. This is a floating zone so that the property owner can come forward and say, I'd like to apply the floating zone concept. Now, in these two areas, there are buildings that are looking tired with vacancies or underutilized space upstairs or downstairs. They have been in a decline mode for the last 30 to 40 years. The decline is due to the change in the retail world, the declining of the office rental market, and the rent amount that can be charged in these areas compared to 30 years ago. 30 years ago on Queen Street in that area there, the rents were about $14 a square foot. Today they're about $10. So after paying for taxes, insurance, mortgage, there's not much left for neither repairs and upgrade. The purpose of the tax change is to allow mixed use of retail, office with residential use at the second floor of existing buildings with second floors. So the issue has to be existing buildings with second floors, and they have to be built prior to 1990. The business use of the first floor should not be reduced. So you have the same amount of business use or more. If someone comes along, knocks down the structure, builds more business on the first floor, then you have that extra business use, and you have residential on the second floor. The business use on the first floor shall not be reduced. The maximum second floor space shall not exceed 12,000 square feet. These buildings are to be existing prior to 1990, as I said. The development of each property, there's a lot of smaller properties, some are larger. You go from a quarter of an acre to an acre, 2 acre maximum. But some of the larger properties are impacted by the floodplain and wetlands area, which cannot be developed. All the appropriate guidelines are outlined in the language proposed as it relates to the use. So as you go through the regulations, that's the statement as what this tax change will achieve. It's listed over here. I submitted that with the application. This is the beginning of the zone tax change, the 4I section, and then it goes page by page. It addresses the applicability of the zone, the allowed uses, and this tax change allows for workforce housing. It is required to be at 20% of the total number of residential units. So the second floor will have residential units, 20% of those will have to be workforce housing. I modeled this requirement after the existing arched zone for the over 55 communities. As you know, we built quite a few of those, and the requirement on those are 10%, and this proposal has 20% in it. And the language is the same as far based on the 830G regulations. There's control of curb cuts, driveways shall be shared. Traffic flows will be investigated. These are site plan issues, but they are part of this text change. It describes the application steps and procedures. To make it clear tonight, the only request tonight is for the commission to consider the text change language. We're not doing any zone change in it tonight. It's a text change language that will give property owners an additional tool to use for their property. If the text change is approved, each property owner within those areas has to come forward and apply for a zone change of their property or a combination of to a special design mixed-use district. So that application of zone change has to have a public hearing, and you have the option to approve that zone change or deny based on the situation of the property and the presentation. The same thing, after the zone change, a special permit is required with the site plan. So at special permit time, again, there's a public hearing requirement, and the commission has all the discretion to approve or deny based on the situation, based on the proposal. Because of these multiple steps, the commission is in total control, and it can approve or deny each application based on the regulation and the circumstances. Many of the properties and the areas outlined are already in mixed use, as I showed the photos, and if you're familiar with those areas. All these are non-conforming. In other words, they're in a B zone, they have different uses, the residential component, those are non-conforming. They existed long ago, and they continue to exist today. As I indicated in my statement submitted, I believe that this is an opportunity to allow development that will bring many properties into compliance. There's probably 50% of the property in those areas that are non-compliant. Will be foster economic development by allowing the rehab or reconstruction of existing underutilized buildings. Provides needed workforce housing that is affordable. I submit that this proposal is consistent with the plan of development, conservation and development on pages 66, 70, 72, and 132 of the plan of development. Identifies sections of Queen Street and Meriden Woodbury Road as needing upgrades, and as a goal encourages the redevelopment and reuse of existing buildings. This is also intended to prevent sites to fall in disrepair and detract from the community appearance. I expect the results of this tax change to enhance the general health, safety, and tax base of the town of Southington. I respectfully ask that the commission approves the request. I reserve the option to add to my presentation before the public hearing is closed, answer any questions that the commission or the public may have. If the commission has any concerns and cannot vote tonight, we would ask that to keep the public hearing open to allow us to address the commission concerns coming back to the commission. If there's any questions at this time, I'll take any of the questions, and I would like to enter some in the record. We have a letter of support from the Chamber of Commerce. Barbara is here tonight. Also, the applicant, Peter DiClemente, had an emergency in Madison. He's an electrical contractor, and he had a power outage at the town of Madison, so he had to attend that, but he sent an email indicating that he prefers to move forward with the applications. So I'll place this in the record.
Thanks. Do you have the excerpts from the POCD? Do you have any excerpts from the POCD with you? Excerpts, like the language, okay.
Does that conclude your presentation, Sam?
Not yet, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yep, go ahead.
Actually,
Sorry.
Dave has asked for something. I think I have that. Let me just.
Dave, what'd you ask him for?
Mr. Chairman, just the excerpts from the POCD that he quoted.
Okay.
I just wanted to see those.
So Sev, go ahead, okay.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Also for the commission, I have copies, small scale, of those two areas with a red mark on each property that could qualify if this tax change is approved. So the first one is on Meriden Warburg Road.
Sev, if you just hand it to Joe down there and Joe can pass them along.
So there's two packages. One
Yep,
is for Meriden Warburg
got it.
and the other is for East.
You guys got it? Can you handle that? Thank you, sir. Thanks, Sev. You all set?
With that, I'm
Okay.
done with my presentation.
Okay, so one of the things before I open it up to the rest of the commission, I just wanted to clarification. You cited the POCD and read off some page numbers. Could you just recite those again for me, just so I can write them down here?
There's an indication in those pages, talks about development.
It was towards the end of your presentation. You read off a couple page numbers.
Yeah.
Dave, do you have the page numbers that he just?
Mr. Chairman, I think he highlighted with red ink on the.
Page
they're right here, Mr.
66.
Chairman. We have them here, sorry.
Okay.
Pages 66, 70, 72, and 132, there's some discussion about encouraging redevelopment in certain areas.
All right. Thank you, Sev. Appreciate
You're welcome.
your time and your effort on this. I'll open it up to members of the commission for any questions of the applicant. Caleb?
Hi.
Hi.
So I remember you talking about this maybe a couple years ago, and I thought it was an intriguing idea to try to utilize space that's just sitting dormant and wasting away. But I have a couple questions that I'm trying to figure out, and I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but first, we'll start off with, so why did you pick 1990 as the year that we're going to cut this off with?
I went as far back as possible, because there's already some in the books from 1957, but it relates to industrial buildings.
Okay.
A lot of these Queen Street, they're not industrial buildings. Some of them were industrial buildings, but they're set back, and they've been developed already. There's the one on Meriden Waterbury Road that the applicant owns at the corner there. There's a block of building in the back, and there used to be some arched structures in the front, but those don't have a second floor. So the proposal is for buildings existing prior to 1990 with a second floor. So we're restricting to those areas. We're not going to redevelop the entire section of the area, all the buildings on the strip. Only the ones with the second floor built prior to 1990.
Would we get a lot more properties if we went to present time since, from 1990? So instead of making it 1990, make it 2024?
Definitely. If you look at the, these pictures that I have on the screen here, and actually the ones I just passed that they're marked. Let's go to the Queen Street one. Oops, what's going on?
Front row.
So a lot of these on Queen Street and Meriden Waterbury Road, there are quite a few, I marked, probably half of those, they don't have an upstairs to it. On the left side, if you go north on Queen Street, on the left side, you have Saints, you have other structures in that area. Those are old, but they don't have a second floor. So it's not included. You would have to include just one floor in this proposal.
Right, and we're not looking for one floor,
Yeah.
we're just looking for that second
Second
floor.
floor.
But again, if we went all the way to current date, that would expand, if they were available.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned
Yeah.
that if we go with the 1990 date, that we'd be limiting ourselves and not opening up as much as we could.
There's not too many new ones on Queen Street in that section that they go forward to 1990. There's a restaurant there just north of 1079 Queen Street. There's an auto repair facility, and then there's a restaurant there. That one was constructed maybe 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. But otherwise, there's not too many new ones with a second floor. On Maryland Waterbury Road, there's that block building that currently is used for daycare.
This is just his,
That one
this is just
is younger. That could fit in there. But on Maryland Waterbury Road also, there's not too many newer buildings within that area. The only one I can think about is the one I just mentioned,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so there is some inventory left out there that
Yeah.
we might be leaving on the shelf if we leave it
Yeah,
at that
there's
number.
one, a couple of buildings probably.
Okay. So my next question is, and again, you might not have this data right in front of you, but the best shot that you can give us, how many of those properties do you think would support more than 4 units? So of the inventory that you reviewed, I'm just trying to get an idea, because you put some square footage in the language here. And I'm trying to figure out how many units can we get in, as an average from some of these. Is it maybe 2 units? Is it maybe 6 units? I guess if they're a studio, you can do a lot better. If it's a 2-bedroom, that kind of thing. But
Yep.
as a generalization,
Some of these properties on Queen Street, one of the owners is here, there's another owner right there, they'll come forward and talk. Some of they're small, so they have to combine them with another property. She owns 2 properties, which she's willing to combine. There's a strip in between those 2 properties. She has spoken to the property owner, and he's in agreement that they'll work together and redevelop that area together. So assuming they do that, they probably can get the upstairs portion, based on what I know of that area, maybe 10, 12 units.
well, let me stop you there then. But that begs the question, though, if they redevelop it, then we're going past that 1990 date. Right? It would be a modern, that's not what we're talking about?
No,
What I was thinking in my head is when you said to redevelop it, they would take those 2 buildings and build
Brand new one.
they would combine them.
They could knock them down
Right.
and do a brand-new building with business on the bottom, up-to-date standards, as today's standards, where you put a parking lot in front, landscaping, proper curb cuts and all that. And then you do business on the bottom and you do residential on top.
Okay. I'm still missing the
But
So,
they
can I- I think
qualify
I can-
because the
Mr.
dates
Chairman.
of the current buildings are prior to. That's why they qualify. They have the right to knock them down or rebuild them,
Okay.
renovating.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I
Sorry.
just want to
Yep.
answer an inquiry. So, based on the numbers, and Seb, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like roughly 15 units per half acre for the studio and 1 bedroom, and roughly 11 units for the 2-bedroom on a half acre. So that's
No,
just
but
an average.
that's the thing. That's why I didn't put any minimum requirement on the square footage, because your basic development is restricted to the coverage, building coverage, and we have that in the building, in the zoning regulation, 25% maximum. So if you have an acre, you can only construct, if, it's not possible to do 100%, but conceivably, you could put a, let's say, 12,000 square foot building on an acre of land. That's if you can really maximize everything, but normally you don't get to be that efficient to do it. So, yeah, the number of units, if you go by the acreage the way he calculated, they come up more, but you cannot fit them in. You cannot create a footprint which would allow you to have that upstairs large enough to fit it. I would say the maximum, any of those sites will have a 10, 12,000 square foot building, which in that case, you have, if you do 800 square foot unit for apartment, you cannot count the hallways, staircases, and so forth. So you probably have 8 units, 10 units?
So I think that what you just said is a good segue into my next question about stairways and hallways and such. So there is language that's explicit that says 100% of the first floor must be dedicated to
Business.
business. If there's an atrium or if there's a stairway, would that impact that 100%? So if we have an atrium that goes, you walk in where your mailboxes are, part of the interior unit, the common space of that second floor residential area, would that then count against that 100%? I just don't want to get locked in because we
Yeah.
said 100%.
Yeah, if you, what you're saying, the staircase leading to the upstairs
Yes.
cannot be counted part of the development of downstairs. But that's part of the development. I mean, you know, if you feel that's a problem, we would have to put something in there, but 100%, in other words, you're not gonna put a residential unit downstairs, that's the idea.
Right, that's the idea. I just don't want to get jammed up in the future and somebody says, well, geez, nothing can go on
We have
that
to be able to
ground
get
level.
upstairs.
Right. All right, and then the last question is just about affordability. And you did kind of mention that, you talked a little bit about how you came up with that 20%, but can you go a little bit further into that and why you landed at 20% and not any higher or lower? More or
It's-
less,
It's more
or
to
any
do with
higher?
economics.
Right.
The more units you put in, the less the project becomes viable. So that we went to the 20% range, instead of the 10 that currently you have. And I know one of the commissioners said, but that's a minimum, and she's correct. So I went to the 20%.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
You
Chair.
all set, Cam?
Yep,
Okay.
thanks, sir.
Commissioner Wolowski?
Yes. So I know you've shown pictures and examples of properties that could benefit from this. However, this proposal would be more broad spectrum and include all the properties within this zone, am I correct?
Not yet, because this is a floating zone, and what we're talking about tonight, creating the language, they allow certain properties within that floating zone to qualify and come forward with the application. When we started this with staff, it says, let's define an area. So we're starting at this point, then go to that point, so not all the properties within that area qualify.
All right. So my next, in section 4I.1, you say, "The provisions of this section shall apply to all new development, redevelopment, and the conversion of buildings from business and residential to a mix of business and residential." So using that as the guideline, if an existing property exists without a second floor, the property could be redeveloped to add that
No.
or not.
No. It would have to be, if it gets combined with another property which has a second floor, then they could combine it and create a basic footprint with a business on the bottom and a residential on top. Otherwise, by itself, could not come forward to get the approval.
I'm not sure Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure the language says that.
Yeah.
That's-
We'll get there.
When I'm
Has
reading
to
that,
have
I
a second
don't
floor.
hear that.
It says it has to have a second floor. That's what the language says.
So,
Could you show me where it says that, though, Sev?
For any building which both residential and business use are proposed, first floor and basement use should be limited to commercial use only. Mixed use, which means the second floor, a mixed-use structure where the first floor or basement residential use are existing on or before 1990, said residential use shall be permitted. For existing development where residential use is added, the area containing existing commercial businesses shall not be reduced. Residential units above the first story or the combined maximum gross floor area of all residential units shall not exceed 12,000 square feet and blah, blah, and no residential unit shall contain more than 2 bedrooms. So as you can see, as I said before, if there's any questions regarding this interpretation, I'd be glad to modify and make it clearer to you, but that's my intention, to have that. That was the beginning of the concept, so somehow we got not clearly indicated here.
I'm good. Thank you. That was my question. It's not here. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Britton, followed by Commissioner Kier.
Hey Seb, how are you?
Good.
During your presentation, you really touched on rehabbing these properties for the betterment of the neighborhoods and the area. My peer to my right, Caleb, was talking about some of that development, and the word finally came out that you will allow new development. And we just talked about square footage and sizes of rooms. In your estimate, in both sections of town, what is the minimum and maximum number of units based on the properties that are eligible today that we would be adding or could add potentially
If they were all developed.
if they were all developed?
I have the areas, for both areas of the two sections of town, so we can extrapolate from the land area, but I would say that it would be probably 40 to 60 units, possibly, if you maximize it,
Is that just in one section of town, or is that,
for both. For both, the Queen Street and the Meriden Woodbury Road.
okay.
If properties were combined, and depends on the circumstances.
Right. I just saw you kind of set some of these as, studio 1,500, two-bedroom 2,000, and then you had some other broken down to smaller, but then you had a maximum of 12,000 square footage. And you probably listed, 12, 13 properties up there.
Yeah,
Seems
but-
like there would be a lot more units.
Not all of them can take the 12,000 square foot building.
Right.
That's why I have.
Yeah, especially if they're small lots.
Okay, there we go. So I totaled the properties on Queen Street. The properties on Queen Street equals 6.92 acres. But these properties are impacted by floodplain and wetlands along the Quinnipiac River. So that 6.92, probably developable portion is probably 3.5 acres at best. So 3 acres is at 130,000 square feet, let's say, of gross land area. 25% of that, so divide that by 4, that gives you the 25%. So if it was 120, it would be 30,000 square foot. So let's say it was 35,000 square foot maximum development based on the density allowed. But as I indicated before, you can never achieve that kind of density. The efficiency is almost impossible. That you cannot do 25% of footprint on a piece of property because you got other things. You got the driveways, loading areas, the landscaping, buffers, and so forth. So you at let's say 30,000, I said here, and similar in Milldale we have 7.39 acres. There's not as much impact by wetlands or floodplains. Some of these properties are like 1 acre, 1.5, like the applicant tonight is 1.5 acres. And that's the one I have an example. I have a 10,000 square foot building sitting on there, 10 to 12. So you have to have a 1.5 acres, not impacted by wetlands or floodplain or other problems, to really have a 10, 12,000 square foot. A lot of these properties, like on Queen Street, 6 properties, they are .38 acres, 1 acre, which has wetlands and floodplain, .69, 1.77, 2.1 acres, .98. So again, the total developable area is not.
Yeah, so to your point,
So
with your map that you gave us, right,
Yeah.
you're looking at maybe
So I'm giving you an
17 to
example.
30 units
Yeah.
on just the Queen Street
30
section?
to 40 units, yeah.
Yeah.
You all set, Rob? Kat?
Thank you. A lot of my questions have been satisfied by both prior commissioners, so thank you. But I will ask this. Did you have any stakeholder communications in this process with any of the residents or business owners on Queen Street and Marion Waterbury Turnpike?
Yes.
Yeah. What was the general feedback in that
They're,
process?
they're right here tonight.
Okay.
Some of them, they can testify, but it was positive.
Okay. All right.
We also spoke in Milldale to the neighbors to the south. There's a residential community there, over 55 community, and they're supposed to be come here. I think Tony is here tonight with the president of the association to provide you with some input.
Thank you, Seth.
But in general, they seem to be positive about it because the conditions of these areas, the building's really not getting fixed up.
Yeah.
It's been in decline for 30, 40 years.
Well, in general, there's a lot of thoughtful and thorough notes in this text amendment change, and I do appreciate the 20% consideration for affordable units. And those are comments, not questions. So thank you,
Thank you.
Seth. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You all set, Kat?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Chaplinsky?
Yeah, I just have a question, Seven. I think Rob kind of touched upon this a little bit with his question. I think you partially answered it, but in regards to the estimated number of units in these two different areas, are you able to break, and I know a lot of it is dependent upon square footage of people, mixing buildings together or whatnot, if they're able to, but the number of cars that might be added onto the road in regards to this, especially in some of those areas on Queen Street that are already very dense, do you have any idea of like a rough estimate of how many new drivers that might potentially be?
Driveways?
Drivers, meaning like cars on the road,
Oh,
additional
no, I don't have a
traffic.
traffic report,
Yeah.
no. I don't have a traffic report.
Okay.
But Queen Street is capable of handle a large amount of traffic. And when you go north of River Street, the traffic amount diminishes versus the one from 84 to River Street. And so the capacity there, I'm sure it's there. And that will be a site plan time, maybe a zone change time, we could provide that information.
Thanks.
You all set? Any other questions from members of the commission? Okay. Sev, you mentioned, I think one of the questions was about density limitations you brought up a couple times. Where in the proposed regulation does it talk about density limitations based on lot size?
It's referring to the zoning regulation. In other words, whatever it's listed, that whatever it's in zoning regulation applies to here.
Where does it say that? I'm just trying, like Commissioner Wolowski, who mentioned the second floor that you mentioned, I'm just trying to catch to see if there's anything that got dropped out of here inadvertently.
Okay,
I'm guessing based on your
density.
testimony that I just want to catch, so.
Yep. Okay. All uses within the SDMU are subject to special permit, Section 8D, and site plan approval, Section 8C. The Section 8C of the site plan regulation will give you the requirements. But again, we have a table here which does not include that density, but we can add that today, and you can stipulate on the last page, Section 4.1.5, where it talks about height and area. We can add E and indicate lot coverage. As a matter of fact, I have written down in red on my notes,
Okay.
25%.
Okay. It also doesn't exclude or differentiate between developable land and non-developable land. So in other words, you mentioned that you can't obviously develop on a wetlands area. There is no provision in the draft that I read, and if I'm wrong, that's fine, right? that says that when you're counting the number of units that are allowed, it's only the number of, you're only counting the site area of developable land and discounting any undevelopable land.
That's why I brought it up. It's based on what you can fit as a density, based on the zoning regulation, which is 25% of the land area currently under business zone. You do not discount wetlands or floodplains when you apply for a building permit. And what's going to happen, you do a site plan and you try-fit the building and the appropriate parking, loading areas, landscaping. So if you have wetlands, you're basically not developing yet. It says, that, in theory, it says you can do 25%, but you may end up doing 10, 15% when you have that situation.
But my point is that in your proposed text amendment language, I didn't see that highlighted, and that might be something that was inadvertently dropped off, but it would
No.
need to be included in there.
No, it was not intentionally dropped off. What I'm saying, we should
I'm
not.
not saying intentionally, I said unintentionally
Yeah,
dropped off.
unintentionally. We should not be discounting that, because now you're reducing the potential way down to, very small amounts of development.
I agree with you, we shouldn't be discounting that, but it should say it. Because if you have, let's just make it simple, if you have an acre lot and half of that lot is covered by wetlands, then all you really have is a half acre lot. And if you only have a half acre lot of developable land, that informs how many units they would be allowed to put on that property.
Again, the number of units, this is what gets a little tricky. It has to do with the ability to design something to fit on that piece of property. It doesn't not preclude, in other words, you have to fit in, have to stay away from the wetlands, you cannot fill them. You have to stay possibly outside of the buffer if you can, the upland review area. Sometime we're allowed to do some grading in that. But again, it comes down to what you can fit in there. Theoretically, you say 25% of the total area, but actually you show a footprint that only can support a footprint that can fit when you apply all the other zoning regulation to it. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well.
If you feel that it has to be
I
looked
think-
at.
I think we're saying the same thing, and I'll just say that architects can be very creative, in fact.
We are
that-
creative,
That
but there's
is,
only a
you're
limit
not an
to it.
architect, Seb, don't claim to be an architect, but
No, I'm not
they
saying.
can be very
architect.
creative, and
Architects
so.
don't design the site plans, we do. Okay?
Right.
They do buildings.
Yeah, right, and they could be very creative about how they design that building to be able to withstand, anyways, let's back out of that hole. You were asked a question about the total number of units, and you mentioned on Queen Street, I think you said 40 to 50 units.
No, I said total between Queen Street and Milldale, probably 40 to 60 units.
Total on both of those corridors under this.
Yes.
So let me just go through a couple properties and ask you about those, okay? Agway, which is not listed on your sheet here, where Agway is right now at 1198 Queen Street. It sits on 4.98 acres. And
It's
under
not
the.
developable, it's not included in this proposal.
It
That kind of
it
building.
is, it's in the corridor, right? And under the current formula that you have here, they would be allowed 149.4 units. Let me finish. Riverbend Plaza, which is located at 768 Queen Street, that would be allowed 145.2 units. Southington Auto, located at 1078 Queen Street, would be allowed 15 units. Hollywood, which you did mention, is at 1104 Queen Street, would be allowed up to 30 units of one-bedroom studio apartments. The Dollar General on Meriden Waterbury Turnpike would be allowed roughly about 10 units. There's a number of other areas out there that far exceed the 40 to 50 units that you mentioned, so I just want to hear your response to that.
I'm glad to give you a response, and I said before, those buildings are not qualified under this regulation. One-story, newer buildings do not qualify. They have to be built prior to 1990. Dollar General in Milldale doesn't even qualify because it's outside of, it's on Canal Street, Meriden Waterbury Road. I indicated that this goes to the bridge. The language in there says including Canal Street. By Canal Street, you have a two-family in the corner, tight in a squeeze. There's nothing you can do there. And the Dollar General is, after 1990, was built 2-3 years ago. On Queen Street, the Agway store, doesn't qualify. This is for existing buildings prior to 1990 with a second floor existing.
We've determined that the second floor existing is not contained in this right now. And under the way that, let me finish, under the way that it's written right now, there is no second floor requirement currently existing. The Agway building was built according to the property card in 1988, so it does qualify. And again, under the way that this is written, it allows for new development, rehabilitation, I'll read it, redevelopment, conversion of buildings, new development, to a mix or business use. They can do all of that under these properties that I just listed. There's another property at 1762 Meriden Waterbury Turnpike, sits on 8.2 acres. That would be allowed 264 units under your
Which property
proposal.
is that?
It's the one by the new car parts store, across the street from Dairy Queen, on Meriden Waterbury Turnpike. The other thing I want
Again,
clarification.
those are outside the area, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry?
And those buildings you're referring to are outside the area, across from Dairy Queen, on Meriden Waterbury Road.
That's not outside the area. The area goes from Clark Street up to where? Up to Tolles Road, okay. Or the old Turnpike Road, got it, okay. I would draw that number
But
then.
my presentation, Mr. Chairman, also has weight in this procedure. In other words, I'm stating in the record that this is what I intend to propose. And if there's some lack of information here, detail, I'll be glad to add it. And that's why I'm asking the commission to bring up these issues that you are concerned with, and we'll be glad to include them.
I'm
But
trying
believe
to
me,
do that.
this is not meant to develop Agway or any stores like that.
But under the regulation, it may not be meant to develop Agway, but under the regulation, they could develop Agway.
I'm putting it in the record. This is my presentation. I'm stating in the record that that's
Okay.
not what's proposed.
Well, that may not be the intention, but there are unintended consequences potentially here that I just want to make sure that you and everyone
We
else
will-
are aware of
we
and
will
give you
correct
an
them.
opportunity to respond to some of those that I see based on what I know today. The other thing that have a little bit of concern with is that you have a line in here, I'm just going to read it, under 4I1, that reads, properties directly adjacent to and sharing a property line with those listed above may also be included within development plans. So if I understand that and am reading that correctly, and I'm not a lawyer for the record, right? But the way I read that, it means that anyone who abuts any of the properties that have frontage on either of these two corridors would be able to develop the property the way that this allows for it to be. So in other words, you have the property on the corner of Canal and Meriden Waterbury Turnpike. There's property behind that. If he were to come in and purchase that property, he could develop that property as well. And then if he was able to purchase the property again behind that, then he would be able to develop that as well. So what you potentially have, and again, I'm looking for your response to this, and in my mind, is a ripple effect of the properties along those corridors, because it can just keep going out and out and out along the corridors if someone just kept purchasing those properties up.
First of all, when I submitted this, before I submitted this, I met with staff, and we went over what I intended to do. They included these areas. My intention is to have it up to the bridge, the rail to trail, not to the including the Canal Street. Okay, I don't want to include that. For the fact that you have a two-family, you have a multifamily already in the corner, you have a Dollar General, and you have a Cape Cod house, the residential unit there. So, we were discussing, where do we go, from here to there? So they said, okay, I indicated I want to start at the bridge and going east. And I wanted to go maybe to Old Turnpike, and they They said, yeah, okay, we'll go to Old Turnpike. There's one possibility in the corner at the Old Turnpike, there's a house, two-story house in the corner where there's a small building next to it where they make pizza there. It's owned by the same individual. If they decide to knock it down and redo that corner, they could develop something in that corner. But other than that, you have a car wash, it doesn't qualify, the restaurant doesn't qualify, and then you proceed westerly. I highlighted some of the properties that could qualify. And it's not intended to have that kind of ripple effect, and I'll make sure that that will be indicated in the regulations then, in the language.
Okay,
It's, what's meant to do is if you have, on Queen Street, you have property next to each other, means laterally, not in the rear. It's laterally, you have these small properties that have an opportunity to get together and do one development and make something nice out of it. That's what the intention is. It's not that you, in the rear, you bought a farm, and then you can buy the farm and say, oh, I can put 200 units.
okay. So Sev, let me just finish with this question for you, is that there's a saying in the world that I traveled in my professional life that there are solutions that look for problems. What's the problem that we're looking to resolve with this proposed tax amendment?
We have two problems. One is lack of housing in town. Even an additional unit or 2 units or 10 units is going to help the people that are looking for housing in town. And the other is the fact that these properties, a lot of these properties, as you can see, and as I said, it's been 30, 40 years, they have not improved. They will not improve because there's not an incentive to improve. So that will resolve the problem of buildings, existing buildings, underutilized or non-utilized, to be able to be utilized and give a shot in the arm to those areas. And you're going to bring up the areas when you redo these buildings. And it's happening all over the state. You go even to the shoreline communities, you see these buildings. One of the pictures I have there is from the shoreline community. They knock down a small building and they put a nice new building.
Okay,
And I want to, it's a personal thing for me because when I came from Italy in 1968, and then I got married in 1969, I lived upstairs at the Manor Inn restaurant. There's 2 units above the restaurant. Probably many people don't even know about it. I worked at Kratz & Jones during the day. I worked at night at the restaurant. My wife did the same. We had 2 jobs. After 3 years, we were able to save enough money to buy a house. And that's what the vision is, that you can allow people to have an opportunity to live in the areas that they want to live in at a reasonable cost. So that's the reason.
okay. I appreciate that, Sev. If there's no other questions from members of the commission, we'll open it up to members of the public to come and testify on the application. All right?
Yes.
You get a chance, as always, as you know, you get a chance to come up afterwards, so this isn't your last bite at the apple, if you will.
Thank
so.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. So at this time, we'll open it up to members of the public who'd like to testify in favor of this application. Please come up to the dais there. Again, start with your name and your address and let us know what your thoughts are.
Thank you. My name is Tony D'Angelo. I live at 46 Brookview Place in Plantsville. I'm probably one of the property owners that would be affected by this tax change. And believe me, our area, speaking for the area, we are thrilled that that corner of Clark Street and Meriden Waterbury Road is going to be cleaned up. There, right now, there's an old building, an old house there that is practically falling down. So we were thrilled when it was purchased, and we're also thrilled that it's a good developer that has bought that property and is going to do something about it. And I do have to agree with Seb, it's the incentive to give these good developers something. It's a win-win situation, this tax change. It's winning for us, and I'm a resident of Southington, so it's a win for Southington, and also it's giving these builders another opportunity. I like the way the text is written, It does give a lot of authority to the planning and zoning, and I do respect everyone on this committee, and I know you'll do nothing but the best for the town. So we're in good hands with the Planning and Zoning Commission with this text change or this text addition. So I look forward to seeing something done at that corner, and quite honestly, I would look forward to seeing a second floor of some, apartments up there too. And I'm speaking for myself, and also I'm speaking for many of the residents at Rivercrest, because we do hear about the horrendous condition of that corner. So this is helping the building, it's helping us, it's helping Southington, so I think it's a win-win. So I would hope that the commission would look favorably upon this text change. Thank you.
Tony, just before you leave, first, I want to thank you for the compliment, because flattering will get you everywhere, so I look forward to.
That's why I did it.
I know, you're a politician, Tony, I know. I look forward to your endorsement next year if I decide to run again, so.
Never know what
but
could happen next year.
Politics aside, we'll leave that one out there.
Never know.
I just, on the Clark
I'll
Street.
drive by that corner first before I do it.
Well, I want to talk about that corner, right? And I have
Okay.
friends who live in the same area that you live in as well, which is very nice residential units back there.
Thank you.
But on that corner, are you aware that we have approved an application? Actually, we've approved the application twice, because they came back with a revision a second time. Over the last couple of years, we have approved an application for development on that corner, which hasn't taken hold yet. Like, unfortunately, some of the applications that we do approve here happen from time to time.
Right, yes.
You're aware of that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay.
All right,
Thank you, sir. Great to see you. Have a
Thank
have a
you.
great
It's always
night.
a pleasure.
I'm sorry, Caleb.
This question might come up with everybody that comes up here tonight, but based on what Seb said about his sojourn into the United States and getting his start and trying to find a place.
And I knew him back then, too.
Excellent.
Good guy.
But based on that, do you think that the 20% affordability is the right thing, or should it be increased?
I'm comfortable with the 20%.
Okay.
I think he looked at the 10%, which is, I guess, the normal figure, and he did raise it to 20%. So I think it's a nice compromise.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Tony. Have a great night. Thanks for coming out. Next. Hi.
I know I'd be speaking. My name is Marguerite Alice. I own Salon Margot in the 1079 section of the Riverbend Plaza. I love it there, and there's a beautiful space upstairs that could absolutely be used, and great structure. It's just waiting to be developed. I would like to have more of a community rather than just businesses, and living there would be really nice because I could just go downstairs. I plan to stay in Southington. I was either gonna purchase my own place and move my business, but I'd rather just stay where I'm at. And it'd be nice to have newer people that live there come and see the businesses. He's been a great landlord, and he knows what he's doing. I've learned a lot from him. And I would highly recommend that you definitely consider allowing him to do that, because he can put together an incredible outcome. So I hope you guys get to see that. And that's all I have to say.
Appreciate you coming out. I have one little question for you. You mentioned, I
course.
think I heard correctly, that you were thinking about moving your business
Yeah.
somewhere else. Why were you thinking about moving your business?
Because I want to work from home. And if I were able to live upstairs, that just eliminates, it was just a future goal of mine, but if I could just not move all my stuff.
Yeah. Where do you live?
I live in Plainville,
Okay.
Canal and Broad,
Okay.
but
It's
I
close.
mean, it'd be a lot nicer to just walk downstairs.
Yeah, you should come live in Southington. We're better than Plainville is.
I started in Plainville, so.
All right, well, thank you for coming out. No other questions from anyone else?
Can I ask my same question?
Caleb, go.
So, based on the question I asked before, I don't know if you heard it, but do you think that 20% affordability is a good number, or should it be higher or lower?
This is my first time, first day. I had no idea what that meant, actually.
So it means that the dollar amount that the rent would be controlled as based on the average for Harford County, essentially. So market rate is, we'll say $1,000. Affordable is $800.
He wants to do affordable?
No. That's the question. Do you think that the rate that was proposed here at 20% of the new units that
I'm
are
game for
installed?
whatever. I would just appreciate the, the build. I'm new to that, but I really can't say because I don't really have background information on that.
Okay,
I wouldn't be
fair
able to
enough.
give an honest answer.
I don't want to push you into
No,
it.
it's okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Anyone else? Okay, thanks for coming out. Have a great night. Ma'am, in the front row here. I saw you get up a couple times, so you got the chairman's attention, so, you're next. Go
Okay.
for it.
Hi, Shirley Bloth. I live in New Britain, 46 Roxbury Road, but my business has been in Southington since '91, my building. And I also purchased a second building in '08 that I actually had full intentions of building out at that time, and then the market crashed, and I couldn't get funding. So it's still sitting there as a two-family house that I actually lived in for a while. Now I have tenants when I moved back to New Britain. I do have, and I'm not sure who to give this to, you maybe?
Give it, Dave down here. I'm not sure what it is, but
Thanks. Yep, Mr. Chairman, there's 5 signatures, says the undersigned, all in favor of the above referenced text change to allow residential over business.
okay.
So the buildings that are there, 1273 is mine, 1263 is Bill, who's on that sign-up sheet there you have, 1257 is mine, and the other two are next door to me. So when you're looking at these properties, and yes, we do have some wetlands on them, but there would be the ability to build, I think, at least 1 floor of retail and 1 or 2 floors of residential in there. I'm not sure what the regulations would allow. And I've had numerous people, and I had a fire in my business in 2012. So it essentially put me out of business at the 1273. So it's been sitting vacant, and I've been using it as pretty much as storage for numerous things since then. And so it's pretty much unusable at this point. It would have to be completely, rehabbed in order to make it usable again, that building. And the one that's next to me, Bill, and then the yellow house would make enough room to put a development in there. Or tear down all 3 of them and put a development in that area, which would afford the affordable housing as well as the retail. And obviously, it's Queen Street, so retail is key in that area. I like the idea of what Margot said about, being able to do something where you live on 1 floor and work on another in the same buildings. They're doing that in Berlin, which is where the rest of my family lives. And it's a nice setup. There's a lot of people who like doing that nowadays. I think that this property would have sold probably 8 years ago already if I had been able to put something together with somebody who was able to develop the whole thing. And I think some of the regulations, they don't want to go through all the headaches of making that happen, and that's why it hasn't sold yet. So I think it would have sold by now had something like this been in place, or something similar to this. It was mixed use apparently at one time. I believe Bill's is still mixed use to 1263, but he's only using it for business at this time, but he did have tenants in there, and actually my former husband lived there for a while. And like I said, the 1257, my intentions at that time when I first bought it was to renovate the whole place and turn it into a business on the first floor and have a business and have residential on the second floor. So for me, I'm in favor of this. Some of the other people I talked to, I'm not sure how it would affect anybody who's got businesses on the other side of the street, because it doesn't sound like, according to the regulations that Sev proposed here, if they weren't built at a certain time or they don't have a second floor, it's probably not going to work for them. But I can see where certain people, it's going to be a benefit to them. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So Shirley, you own, what buildings, 1273?
73 and 57,
1257, are those both wood frame structures?
they are.
Were they both built?
One, the
in
1257 was built in 1929.
Yep.
The 1273 was built in, I believe, the 30s. I'm going to
Okay.
say maybe late 30s, 39. The addition that, I knew the lady that actually owned it when it was a house. She used to come in my store when I had Pass It On Sports there. And I had asked her some questions about it, because I did some renovations internally, and cathedral to ceiling, and found out a few things. So after the war, they added one of the rooms to the right of, well, to the left of that garage that you see, that's going down into the hole there, so to speak.
Yep.
There's a room, I forget the exact dimensions, let's say 20 by 25. They added that room after the war, because I have 2 chimneys in my place, and one of them was the original building. Then there was that addition that happened after that. That used to be a hair salon when I first moved in there, and I only rented. So when I first moved in there, I was a renter, and then I bought the building when that guy left from the owners. But it was a house that got turned into commercial. So in order for her to make it a better commercial space, I cathedraled all the ceilings. And when I talked to her, all the boards were sistered in, because they didn't have boards long enough to go the full length of that room, because it was a flat ceiling at the time. So that little addition got added in after the war. And then I did the addition on the right side that has the garage down below and the building up, the space up above, it's like 30 by 40. I did that addition, I'm gonna say, oh geez, now I gotta add 12. Probably 20 years ago. So I just increased the footprint of that building. That's as big as you can go anyways, because of the setbacks and stuff. And I don't have a backyard to speak of in that building, because that was sold to the condos next door. And there are full sets of condos right next to me. So to have this as this kind of a setup, to me, would be perfect, because I'm already in that, like, a piece of my property is actually in Plainville, but most of it's in Southington, so that's where the regulations come in. But right next to me is all the condos, and they took a part of what was originally that backyard of that house, they took it for their parking lot. That's why the 2 pieces next to me, Bill and the yellow house, the 1257, ours go down deep into the back of that property, and they do hit not the Quinnipiac, but the wetlands area.
Okay, so we'll have to work on moving that town line, because,
Well, there's only a little chunk, it's
Yeah.
like 500
well,
feet.
well, here's why we need to move it, because our regulations already allow for mixed-use development on those 2 properties, given that they are both residential wood frame structures were in existence prior to or on March 30th of 1982. There's a couple provisions about building code and fire code and 2-story in height, and again, as outlined here, that the bottom floor needs to be used as a business and the top floor needs to be used as a residential, but our regulations already allow for that. So,
My understanding is only Bill's was considered mixed use, mine is still considered only residential. The yellow house, the 2-family.
I don't think I think it's probably zoned as a business, but you're probably what Sev refers to and what we refer to as a non-conforming use. But again, you are allowed a mixed-use development on both of
All right,
those
who wants to
properties
buy
based
it?
on the answer that you just gave me to the questions I had, so.
Okay.
So just so you know, but I appreciate you coming out, and I appreciate you testifying and sharing your thoughts with us. And as a landowner and a property owner and a landlord, of course, that is important as well.
Well, and I'd
so.
like to see something happen in Southington still. I think it's a good location, that's why I bought it, or that's why I rented in the first place many years ago when I first started my business, and then expanded. I had 2 businesses in there for a number of years, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind having something happen there again, and I'm looking at a couple of options right now, so we'll see what happens. And-
Okay.
And I'm gonna say the same thing that he said to all of you, you're great.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate the endorsement, and I'll say this to you because you're a New Britain resident. We are, quote me here, way better than New Britain is. Bring it.
I've been there a long time.
Yeah, well,
I've been in business there for 50 years.
okay. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. Anyone else who'd like to testify in favor of the application at this time? Sir?
Good evening, Pete Anderson, 1177 Marion Avenue in Marion. And I just want to say I'm highly in favor of the mixed use and reuse concepts to increase residential space. Wholeheartedly endorse what Sev had said about people living in a smaller space to save the money to move into their ultimate dream. I do have a few concerns with some of the specific language as it's written. number one, it talks about allowing all uses that are in CBC and BOZ. And I'm most familiar with the Meriden-Waterbury Road section. I believe that's all just business right now, and I would hate to see that zone expanded to go beyond that to central business and some of these other ones. And maybe that's not the intent, but that's the way I read the regulation. Also, the way I read it, it would allow redevelopment of a property, maybe knock down what's there, put up something new, and now you've got a 3-story building. Some of the terminology here talks about how many bedrooms can be on the second floor. It doesn't say anything about above the second floor. The 20% affordability, I'm all for affordability. The one thing that concerns me, if we're talking about 2-family houses and there's a 20% requirement, I would think the requirement should be at least 1 unit or 20%, whichever is greater. Otherwise, if you don't have, 5 units, what's 20%?
That math is difficult.
On the section 4.8H.8 architectural, all good things. I just question, while they're great goals, who gets to decide and how they're measured? These are pretty broad, non-specific, that I would think could either be made more specific, or is there some intent for a design review board to come in and weigh those kinds of things? In 4.I.4, site development criteria, especially number 9, talking about allowing drive-through windows. It just seems to me drive-through looping around someplace with residential entry sounds like an accident waiting to happen, and I wonder if the police chief has weighed in on something like that. And then my final comment is on 4.I.5, height and area. It would seem to me that this is a business area now. These recommended setbacks and heights should not be any less than what they are today. If there's a non-conforming use there today, that's fine. But I don't think we should be allowing a redevelopment and a new construction in a business zone, what's a business zone today, that technically, depending on the surrounding structures, could be less than what the code requires. So again, I'm really in favor of the concept, especially the way Sev described it. I just worry that what's in the text doesn't quite get there yet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for members of the commission? Mr. Anderson? Thanks for coming out.
Yep.
Anyone else who'd like to testify in favor of the application at this time?
Yes, John Salino, 60 East Shore Drive, Niantic, Connecticut. I've got 2 properties here in Southington. One's at 1173 Queen Street, and I'm 100% in favor of this entire concept. The second property I have, is 714 West Street, and I would, and I talked to the planner about 6 months ago about, we've got a building there with 10,000 square feet in the second floor for lease for better than 5 years. Not having shown it, but only 2 times in 5 years. And the concept that Sev is talking about, redeveloping the second floors, he's absolutely correct about. And, we've got underutilized, and if it was, converted and been able to utilize, it would raise the tax base and stop the erosion, economic erosion that's happening there. And the chances of renting office today is, very limited. And most offices, when we do re-rent them, we're re-renting them for less than we had in, previously. And I own, I control a number of properties throughout the state. But I think that the concept of just limiting this to 2 strategic areas like spot zoning, I think it should include anything that's got an existing second floor or greater in, in properties. I don't know about the 1990 either. I think that's just kind of arbitrary, in my opinion. But I think the concept of doing this, and I discussed it with the previous planner, and, they've given me an indication to, bring something forward. And then I spoke to Sev about it, and we would like to see West Street included in that, but I think the entire, in my opinion, not just this town, but most towns with second floors, buildings that are, that are done for offices, and that the idea of converting them, it's happening all over the country now. New York City's happening everywhere. These big buildings, they're converting them to, and to make it more affordable for people. I think it's a great concept, and it needs to be expanded. But I think to limit it just to 2 specific areas in town, I don't know if that's really equitable to all us, to taxpayers. And, we're sitting here paying for buildings that we can't rent. Obviously, it's bringing down our values, and our tax bases are dropping. So ultimately, the taxes are dropping. I don't think that's good for Southington either. So I think I'm in favor of this concept. I like his ideas. I like the concept, the time and effort he's put into this. But I do think that the commission should include this, at least for existing buildings. Anybody who's got an existing building, I think, I think definitely it should be, allowed to, to go to residential, assuming it meets all the other requirements, coverages and density and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're seeing this in other parts of the country, new construction, where they're building retail, they're putting offices above it, they're putting self-storage above it, they're putting apartments above it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that I think the world has changed, and, I think the concept of having old and dilapidated buildings and to get new ones and to create more economic value and bring more people into town, is and to meet the requirements, not only of affordable and workforce housing, but, but the, people, children of our residents here who want to stay in town, to make that, available to them. So I just would like the commission to consider, not only these 2 little areas, but, I look at us, we've got, we're right next to the Residence Inn, right on interchange, and it seems to fit exactly into the areas that, Sev is talking about. But even then, I would think even if this particular building was included in it, I don't know if that's fair to everybody who has buildings down the street or in the center of town or wherever it is. So I think I would, like the commission to see the commission consider all, properties existing especially, that could be, modified in I don't think it opens up, I don't think the requirements that Sev, as I've understood it, and once the planner told me about this, he introduced me to Sev, I've talked to him about it, his concept of basically existing buildings on the second, floors is pretty limiting, because, in effect, there's not all that many, that have, that would qualify really, when you would actually think about it. So, and adding, if you look at our building, when you take out the hallways, take out the entryway, take out the elevators, you got 10,000 gross square feet, you'd probably be down to 8,500, and you could, probably put 10, 12 units maximum up there, so I don't think it's adding, it wouldn't add the hundreds, that would, cause a problem. And typically, these buildings, where they are located, you really, they really wouldn't be technically, like, you look at this particular building in West Street, you're probably not going to end up with families in that type of a building there, being that's a sea of, it's an acre lot with a sea of pavement, so I don't think it's, it's more for exactly what Seth was talking about, workforce housing, and keeping, and something affordable for people in town, for servicers and stuff. So I think I think it's a good concept. It's one I think his concepts overall, I'm wholeheartedly in favor of. The other property on Queen Street, obviously, we wouldn't be planning on putting a second floor on it. It's there now. It's a 13,000 square foot, 14,000 square foot retail center. But I think the idea of having, having the rest of the area with these other properties people are talking about developing, and, I would encourage that. I think that's, we should encourage economic development, especially on our key arteries in town. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming out, appreciate it. Hold on one second, sir.
Oh, sure.
Rob?
Thank you for coming out and speaking today. And thank you for just bringing up, rehabbing existing properties in other places in the town. I just had a question. You as a landlord, what are your thoughts if hypothetically we were able to expand it, say we approve it, and you get tenants upstairs in your property? Your downstairs professional offices, right?
It's mainly retail downstairs right now, but
How
we've
would-
had some professional offices there. They just moved out, actually,
Okay.
because, again, with the concept of everybody working at home, they didn't need the space anymore.
How would you feel about, residents parking in the lots downstairs or, walking through it or just being there that, you wouldn't have that today, right? You'd have people there from like 9 to 5 and then, like, what are your thoughts as a landlord? I'm just
I
curious.
think it's, first of all, I think it's excellent because you'd have somebody there 24 hours a day. So if you look at that particular property in 714 West Street, it made the papers 6, 8 months ago when they did a smash and grab in the smoke shop. And then this past 2 weeks ago, a 80-plus-year-old woman decided to hit the gas set of brakes and went through the nail salon. So but as far as people walking through and having activity, the more people, if we did have people upstairs, it would only benefit, the retailers downstairs and in our particular properties, we restrict business owners. And what we're doing residential also is to, have not park in the retail areas. So, we ask all of our properties that the owners and workers park in the rear and leave the front open. So we, don't have jam-ups and such as that. And I think that the, concept of more activity on a property, benefits everybody, in my opinion. But, they have them have somebody in those buildings 24 hours a day definitely would improve the security situations. I mean, that was obviously an anomaly, but I think it's I look at this and I think it's, it's a wave of the future and we have to look at, redeveloping, a lot of different properties, no different than a mall. Looking at malls today, we have to be redeveloped. Times have changed. In traditional offices, we used to have, 120 square feet per office, and people could sit down in desks. It's no longer there anymore. A major law firm just changed their office in Hartford, and they cut their space down by almost 50%, and they share desk space because so few people are in there. So the need for traditional office is just not there. So, we have to do something. In malls, they can change them into sports facilities, et cetera, and in self-storage or whatever they want to do there, but, we don't really have that, ability on the, and when you have traditional office. So I don't think this is unique as, and to build, from, brand new also, the concept of, building an apartment complex, entirely, from scratch today is extremely expensive, and those rental rates, need to get up there into the, low thousands. So, you're talking $2,000 or $3,000 to build a new apartment concept today. So where the rehabilitation of some of these older buildings can be done for, well less than half of that. So obviously that would clearly reflect substantially into the rents and make it more of the workforce housing, which, would fit the, more of the 830G, because the 830G, obviously, if you go new, you can't really work that. And even if you're going way 830G new, it's hard to make them work. It's just, the cost today is just so outrageous. So I think this is a good thing, and I think it's something that, is, needs to be, considered, and and it was the previous planners, gave me the indication and encouraged me to bring something forward, in the discussion, which I should have been doing, a few months ago, but I do, at my age, you get a little complacent, so,
Yeah.
but he did introduce me to Seven.
Appreciate you coming out tonight,
So
John.
thank you very
I appreciate
much.
your input. Thank you very much. Mr. Ricchio, you look like you're ready. Hi.
Good evening. Thank you, Commission members. Mike Ricchio, 124 Andrews Street in Southington. I'm here to speak in favor of this proposed text change, and for many of the reasons that we've already heard tonight. But the spirit of this came out. We've heard this. I've had many meetings with Seb on this and the Economic Development Strike Committee. The spirit of this came out because offices as we know it today on the second floor above retail are just, they're all empty. And actually 714 West Street is a great example. I would actually encourage you guys to maybe figure a way to add that property into this. I think it might be easier to exclude areas where this is allowed. So you would exclude Queen Street, you would exclude from the linear trail up to 84 on Meriden Waterbury Road. You would exclude West Street from his building, or actually from the highway to the Bristol line. But those offices will never come back. It's just the fact of where we are in times today. The hospitals have absorbed all of the medical space into their own properties. So they bought up all the practices and they bring, look what we have on Queen Street, we have a beautiful new medical building. So I think with regard to that, that's the way it's going to be. You know, I had the pleasure to serve in your seat many years ago when we looked at the adaptive reuse for industrial buildings. And there's a perfect example of, you know, we have industrial buildings in Plantsville and around town that were 3 and 4 stories tall that just doesn't fit manufacturing today anymore. And so we had to come up with a route to fix that problem. And I think it worked very well. There are some things that I think you need to include in this, and I would really ask you to allow Mr. Bavino time, if it's another meeting or 2 meetings, to really hone this in so it's to benefit those properties as well as the town of Southington from a tax perspective. If you take a building like 714 West Street and he's allowed to build apartments upstairs, you're going to get increased tax revenue from those apartments, and this gentleman will most likely sell that building, and then you're going to get the tax revenue from the sale of that building as well. I would look at things, and I would be very specific because these are in business areas. Central air is mandatory. You don't want window units hanging out of these second floor buildings in our beautiful business zone. So I would mandate that these developers be required to put central air in. I would require them to pave the rear parking lot where these residences would park. If you look at most of these buildings, it's gravel in the back. And I would address that with paved parking and potentially some enhanced landscaping back there to give it a more of a residential feel. I would require elevators on any of these buildings to the second floor to open these potential apartments up to our seniors and the elderly. And as far as architectural review, that's really beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. I mean, a lot of people hate the new library, and if I were in your seat 20 years ago, I would have said that's ugly. My tastes have changed over the years, and I actually think the new library looks pretty spectacular. So I would eliminate actually the affordability component to this. As a developer, I can tell you that if you have a 4-unit complex that you're trying to build, good luck trying to get a bank to finance it with an affordable component in there. So while we're trying to encourage these properties that are really dilapidated to get rebuilt and bring them back on the tax rolls, you're not going to accomplish that with an affordability component. It just, the numbers don't make sense. You can't have a non-market rate property, put all the money into it and expect to get financing on that. It just doesn't work. You know, if you want to talk about that, it needs to be complexes that are 40, 50, 100 units or more. And I actually believe that, you know, being on that topic, you guys are going to chase the affordability component until we're all dead because it's a moving target and you're never going to meet it. I would actually just give up on it. And Southington we exceed the state's standard for affordable housing. They just don't count all of ours, which is a shame. And I know, Mr. Chairman, I think we agree on that. So I think those are most of the points. The spirit of this, and in the 2 zones that Sev presented, they're dead zones. The traffic counts for retail or big box retail or national retail will never get to the point where you're going to get a national chain in there. They're just too far from the highways. So those are out. Mom and pop retail, you're not going to get that. They can't afford it. Those are out. So in these areas, if you drive down there, these buildings are gross. And what's left? And I think this is a way to change that. And the question was brought up earlier about single-story retail. That is not, I think, Mr. Chairman, you gave the example of Agway. That is not the intent of this at all. So give Mr. Bovino time to fix the language in that. And I mean, if we're worried about single-story retail, and we want to talk about affordable, they could, the way our regs are written right now, come in here tomorrow, knock that building down and shove an 830G down your throat, and we're screwed. So I think Sev can, if he has the time, he can fix that. But I think I would highly encourage you guys to once this thing is polished, pass it. So, any questions?
Thanks, Mike. Just two questions, or two topics anyways. One is the potential for additional traffic along these corridors. Queen Street is a 4-lane roadway, 2 lanes in both directions. Meriden Waterbury is not that way. Do you think that either of these corridors could handle additional traffic from additional residents and/or buses that might be added to those areas in order to service those residents?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The most likely you're going to see in these are young professionals or retired people. You know, families aren't going to want to, families will be more apt to move into the old Wolf Hill into a 2-family house with a yard and grass and let the kids play. I don't think you're going to get very many children in these. The developments that I do around the state, it's very, very rare that you're going to see a family moving into something like this. And adaptive reuse, we do quite a bit of. It's a catchy phrase. It's happening all across the country. And as far as the traffic goes, you're not going to get any more traffic there now with 1 or 2 people living in a unit that you would have gotten 20 years ago, and those were filled with actual offices with people coming and going all day long. So your trips are going to be far less than what these properties generated when they were functioning as the way they were built.
So it's a good dovetail into my second point is, you mentioned a couple times that businesses are struggling to maintain brick and mortar operations, if you will, right? There's 2 components to this. One is the residential component, and one is the business component. So how do you address that component that requires the business to be there? Because I might suggest, or others might suggest, that without one, the other one doesn't work, and vice versa. So it really requires both ends of it. Otherwise, you're going to have first floors vacated because businesses won't be there, and then your second or third floors are going to have residential, and then pretty soon someone's coming in and saying, "Hey, I had this floor that I can't get businesses in. You should just make it all residential." And then some future planning and zoning commissioner is struggling with that issue. So how do you?
I think it's an ebb and flow. If you go down to these areas now, I don't think there's very much vacant retail that's there now. It's mom and pop that's in there, that's surviving. Meriden Waterbury Road and that section of North Queen Street there, I think most of them are full. By adding people living upstairs, you're going to add a little bit more of a component of a residential thing that will survive. I think as things ebb and flow, hopefully downtown, that 250-unit complex gets built soon, and I think what's going to happen there is it's going to make those storefronts unaffordable for hair salons and tattoo parlors and that sort of thing, because the demand's going to go up for a stronger retail tenant to come in. Those businesses might then be able to stay in town and get moved out to some of these infill retail spots that would have cheaper rent.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Thanks. Good to see you as always.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a happy Thanksgiving. Anyone else who'd like to testify in favor of this application? All right, let's open it up to anyone who'd like to testify in opposition to this application. Mr. Perillo. Good to see you too, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. Lou Perillo, Town of Southington Economic Development Director. I understand the spirit of what this is trying to accomplish. I just disagree with how it's presented. Great questions by everybody. Kind of tough, isn't it? You're trying to decipher a lot of things. I think the commission has tools that are available that make it a lot easier. You can do an overlay. In the past, we did redevelopment overlay districts. that you can control the area. All right, so I've heard a lot of statements that I would like to clarify. Economic development, a lot of this is economic, which is financial, not necessarily economic development. Some of it's redevelopment, not necessarily economic development. So I want to be clear about that because economic development has a synergy. You have to have a complementary component. So, and I'm not really, I don't want to say, I understand what they're trying to do, but real estate is a cycle. So when people say, I can't get office on my second floor buildings, it's dead. They said that, you know, before in the downtowns, but things go in a cycle and there's depreciation. People always think of depreciation as a write-off or some intangible item, but it's real. These buildings depreciate. They do have to get either torn down or redeveloped. I heard about taxes. Let's, you know, increase the taxes by putting units up on the second floor. You get 1 or 2 kids, that negates all the taxes. Now, it's not that I'm against some of it. I need to have someone explain to me how it's fair if you have parcel A that has a 1-acre lot with a single-story building, and right next to it, parcel B has a 2-story building pre-1990. They get to tear it down and rebuild, but parcel A can't. Is that good planning and zoning? Does that make sense? So I would think you would want to take an area and outline an area and say, maybe if you assemble the properties, or you could do this, you could do this, because what happens if one property can develop and the other one can't? Do you get blight next to a brand new building? Now, I've heard retail is dead. You can't get retail. There's got to be 24 properties that were displayed here, 12,000 square feet, I heard. Where's that 12,000 square feet per property going to come from if retail is dead? From the people upstairs shopping downstairs? Then there's other unintended consequences. Business zones are traffic corridors for commuters to get to business services and they're to get to commuters to get to work. You want a bus stop at every certain area where there's an unintended consequence from the regulation. So I think the commission would want more control on where this has to go. The other thing is, oh, we need apartments and more housing. That may be true, but are you aware we have 200, this commission has, in the previous commissions, you have 250 units downtown. Will they get built? Maybe, but they're approved. You have 225 units on West Street coming in, on the corner of Curtis and West. You have application on Lazy Lane coming. We have Lincoln College, which might be coming forward with some sort of redevelopment. So if you have 700 units coming, you might want to wait until your plan of conservation and development to see what you have, and then tweak what Mr. Bovino is trying to say to accommodate what he does. This commission bent over backwards on that corner lot of Meriden Waterbury Road and Canal. They came in with the gas station, you accommodated a tight spot, you changed it again. It's not the commission's fault that it didn't get redeveloped. It's an economic. Some of these properties aren't getting developed because the owners are asking too much for it. And they have a right to do that. There might be an emotional attachment, but it's not necessarily fair for the rest of the public to have to stop at bus stops and whatnot to get to a corridor. You guys are great. You're trying to help a lot of these people. Sometimes you have to take a look at some of the parcels. What happens to the zone when you change it? So if it's 40 or 50 units, why don't you cap it at that? The other thing that we had heard is, you know, property at 1273 could be developed because of the new change in some of the laws. Some of it are 830Gs. So if they're going to be 830Gs, we hear you can't do 30% because it's not economically feasible. Commission doesn't look at economically feasible or taxes. So, you know, when you look at those consequences, is it financial or what is it? So you got a tough job, and it's great that people are coming out here. Let's have an intelligent conversation on how to help some of these properties. So for example, if you are on the east side of Queen Street, north of River Street, you may want to have residential or mixed-use residential in that area for a certain portion of it, but perhaps not on the other side where you have the Hollywood Cafe, and more importantly, the industrial buildings behind it, because you're not getting your separation that you may want. So I think it's the unintended consequences of where, and you know, someone mentioned spot zoning. You know, it's property-specific, which could be owner-specific. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be doing an area for development. So I heard about the Arch Zone, and it's 10% affordable, and so you come up to 20. Well, the Arch Zone, you increase the density in an existing residential zone, and you make it 55 and up, so there are no school kids, school-age children within that zone, and you're getting accommodation towards our goals. So I don't give up on our goals of reaching our 10%, even though, you know, Mr. Ricchio is right as far as we have affordable housing that's not counted by the statute. But by the same token, it's something that we have to strive to. And you are going to give an accommodation by allowing residential in a business zone, but we're not getting anything for it. I love the idea of elevators to the second floor. If you want to make it 55 and up, that might take care of the bus situation. You know, it might take care of some of the affordables that you can do. I just think there's a better way of doing this than a text change. You know, and I think this commission, since you have your POCD coming up again, I think that's a really good time to look at it and try to help Mr. Bovino and some of these property owners to do it. And then the other thing that I found kind of interesting is it kind of starts out on Queen Street, north of River Street, Meriden Waterbury Road. Now it's West Street. What's next? Is it going to be this area, that area? Because you're kind of opening up the door. We've had business, residential and business, and what it did was it stifled future retail growth. It's commonly known in economic development, retail gets more retail. You know, if you want a CVS, Walgreens goes across the street, McDonald's, Burger King, Subway, they grow, they feed off each other. You know, economic development is about balance. It's about jobs, not just redeveloping 15, 20 properties for highest and best use. Sometimes you have to tear them down, you have to assemble them, and do something better. Property owners don't want to hear that. Thank you very much
Any
for your
question?
time.
One sec, sorry, Lou, thank you. Caleb?
Hey, Lou. So I'm going to touch on what you, or I'm going to ask about what you said about synergy, and with regard to economic development, and what some of the other folks in the crowd had said about, or at least the young lady that spoke about being able to live upstairs and move downstairs. And then we also, I mean, my questions have all been about affordability and affordable housing. So having that affordable option to support then the businesses that we have on the first floor. You know, the barber that wants to live on the second floor, the hairdresser that wants to live on the second floor and work in her shop downstairs, to make her life easier, to, you know, reduce the commuting, but also for, you know, jobs that just don't pay as much, for somebody who can then support the jobs that we do have in our community, a lot of restaurant jobs and things like that. Can you just kind of touch on your perspective on that?
We have that. We have it in our central business zones. You have it on certain property specific. You know, I think on 1257, if you converted the first floor to a business and lived on the second floor, you could do just that. So we have those opportunities within our community. You know, it's just, and it's very clear. And just because someone might want to do it on this one particular location doesn't mean it's in the best interest of our whole community. So, you know, you might not get your choice of your business. For example, there's probably a hair salon, Great Clips on Walmart. Do you allow them to put a second floor on Walmart and fill it with apartments just because someone wants to live downstairs? Or do you say, hey, look, you might want to go downtown on the corner of, I think it's across from TD Bank and Flair. You know, the first floor, I think, is wax and hair, and second floor could be a residential or something along those lines. So we do have those opportunities in town. And you might, the commission might, at your discretion, say, that area of town, north of Queen Street, fine, put in an elevator and do it. I just get a little confused when I hear 11 units on a half acre, plus like a 12,000 square foot building. On an acre, 22 units? You know, or 20 units, you're going to do 4 affordable? Is that going to be a great tax gain for us versus the $90 million project?
And we don't look at taxes.
I understand that, but it was stated, so I just have to repeat that.
But this commission, as part of our POCD, does look at affordable housing. And so
Correct.
from, again, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but from my perspective, it's important to look at that, and to the perspective of a lot of people that testified today, being able to have some usable space in their building to help them pay
And
the
I
rent or
respect and
pay
I
the
understand
mortgage,
that,
you know?
yeah.
And that's what really intrigued me when this was first kind of described to us, about
So-
using every available bit of that property.
So, for example, you have an MUT, you have 2 of them in our town. You might want to expand on that or modify it, reduce the acreage. So you have 3 parcels on the north end of Queen Street. What if that were a mixed-use transitional? Where you have mixed use on the first floor, an elevator, second and third floor. You think a developer would love to come see that? That might work for you. You know, I just think you have to explore. I think it's fair if you do it there, but the neighbor who has a single-story building should be able to tear down their building and do the same thing at some point, in my opinion. You might feel differently. If I'm putting up, or if a developer puts up a $6 million building next to that 1990 building that's not eligible, is that really quality of what you want seeing downtown or Strip? You know, and the only thing I will say, you really have to protect the core of Queen Street. Queen Street has been around for 6 decades. We've been through recessions, great recessions, through cycles. It is nationally recognized. You really can't mess that core area up by putting in residential where people can't get to commute to Hartford because they're stopping for bus stops or unintended consequences. How's it gonna look? So tenants have more rights these days than landlords. What are you gonna do for the second floor, third floor? They're gonna have, you know, you might not have window unit air conditioning, but what are you gonna see with like shades and everything? Is it gonna be consistent? You know, are they gonna be tinted? What's the look going to be like? You can't control it. The other thing that I have a concern about is unintended consequences. You might have a resident on the second floor that's causing problems for the business on the first floor. Business on the first floor moves out. So the landlord kind of soaps up the windows a little bit, and they say, the second floor people say, well, I want to store stuff downstairs. We don't allow that in a business zone. But, you know, for $100, you know, I get the 10 units, everyone throws in $100, I get $1,000 a month more. I'm not going to try to rent it. And somebody kind of lives down there. You know, you can't control that. So I don't really like to get into the hypotheticals. I just think there's a better way of the commission working with Mr. Bovino and some of the property owners to achieve what's in the highest and best interest of our community.
You all set?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Thank
Lou,
you.
it's always good to see you.
Same here, sir.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Thank you,
Yeah,
you too.
take care. Anyone else who'd like to testify in opposition to this application? All right, seeing none. Sev? You want to respond to some of the question and give and take that's going on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've repeatedly stated that the amount of units for properties are dependent on the zoning regulation currently in place. So questions were asked of me, guess how many units? I did not state that on half acre you could fit 12 units upstairs and 12 units downstairs. I repeat again, it's based on the zoning regulation, what kind of footprint you could place on that, but half acre does not sustain that kind of development because of other issues. We have had this in the past, this mixed use has been with us for 50, 60 years. People have lived like that with the second floor used for residential and the business downstairs. Doing this kind of thing brings life into these areas that currently don't have life. You have a business that's struggling, and now you have some residential. It's not going to preclude a national company or a local company to decide to develop that property specifically just for business. This doesn't preclude that. This is just another tool in the toolbox for the property owner. And when we say, well, we gotta wait, how long are we gonna wait? It's been 40 years these areas have been like that. They haven't changed. Actually, they have declined. So now and then we have to make some decisions and move forward and try something and see how it works. And as I stated, each one of these properties will have to come forward to apply for zone change and special permit and site plan, and each one of those steps requires certain things, and the commission has the discretion, especially on special permit and zone change, to require certain things that you cannot put in a text change. It would be a 10-page long text change. Yeah, I was trying to do a short text change, then I developed it more and more and more, and as you develop, it gets into more detail. But basically, the request is to consider 2 areas of town for now. If you feel that in the future you want to do more, it's up to you. And these 2 areas I mentioned, Queen Street, the north end, and Meriden-Woodbury Turnpike, and we can limit that Meriden-Woodbury Turnpike not to include the other side of Canal Street. Can start at the bridge and go east. And those are the areas proposed. And realize that this is something that is controlled by you every step of the way. So there's not some unintended consequences. Those consequences will be caught by you as if someone comes forward and proposes something that's 10-story tall, and it has no space for landscaping, no parking. You're going to say, this doesn't work. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So and there is no such thing as 3-story. We're not proposing 3 stories. And the buildings that we're going to build is going to have to meet the building code, the current building code, versus having some older structure like they testified here, going back to 1929. These new buildings will be meeting the current code and whatever it's required under those regulations. And this concept works specifically because it's a mixed use. You have business downstairs and you have residential upstairs. There's certain requirement that the building code requires to have that kind of a combination, okay? So there will not be any disturbance. There are certain things you have to do to the floor in terms of fire protection, sound effect, all kinds of requirements. And this is, no matter what percentage we put in for the affordable housing or not, this is for workforce housing. It is at that price range, it will be serving the community and the people in the community that need a place to stay and live. And talking about living upstairs, working downstairs, that's a perfect example that Queen Street has a sidewalk from Plainville all the way to the shopping plaza where the new where TJ Maxx is. There's a bus stop there that comes there on a regular basis, and the bus actually goes north on Route 10, and people can actually walk from that area to the bus stop at that plaza. And in that plaza, specifically 1079, 1049, there's 19 units currently, and there's a mix of uses right now, from insurance to barber shop, nail salon, a restaurant, a men's shop, a liquor store, a church. Some people got together and wanted to create a church, a small space, and they operate out of there. There's martial art in there. So someone living upstairs on those units will be benefiting from those businesses and vice versa. Definitely will have central air. I stated that before. The architectural control is in the language that I presented to you. And the large development, it will not be coming. It's not, these are not large parcels. Again, I could give you the acreage. These are small parcels. They have to be combined. About the fairness of the building that's next door, it's a single story versus a 2-story. I had to come up with something that limits the use of the business zone, because there's a concern about, oh, we're going to lose the business zone. Like years ago, residential was allowed in the business zone. On South Main Street in Plantsville, we did multiple projects there with condominiums. They're not creating a problem for anybody, but the town decided at the time we're going to stop allowing the business zone to be used for residential. But this is not at that scale. This is more utilizing existing buildings, reutilizing the properties, actually reduces the carbon footprint of development. If you're looking at the environmental aspects of this, instead of go buy another piece of property and turn grass into pavement into buildings, we have existing buildings on an already developed site, and we're utilizing and making it better. And most likely there'll be requirements, environmental requirements that we will have to put in place to control the runoff, clean the water, and so forth. I have not placed a minimum land area, again, because these are small parcels, and the development is based on what you can fit on the parcel, based on the zoning regulations. But if the commission feels that there should be a minimum land area, we will look at that. And by the way, downtown Southington, the reason a lot of the properties downtown Southington haven't been developed, because there is a minimum land area in the CB zone for 30,000 square feet. And there's a lot of parcels there, they do not have 30,000 square feet, and they cannot do the development because of that. And that's another reason I did not include it here. And I take the comments from Peter, Mr. Anderson, and I will look at them. And I would like an opportunity to work with staff to go over your concerns, the commission concerns, and the people that have spoken. And we will work and clean up this regulation and make it more specific. I'd like to have that opportunity. If the commission feels to grant me that opportunity, I would request a table.
Okay. Well, you're not requesting a table, you're just requesting a continuance of a public hearing. So that was going to be my next question to you, is that, do you feel as the applicant that you need additional time for us to keep the public hearing open? Because again, once a public hearing is closed, we cannot take any additional information or testimony, and we have to act on whatever is before us. And to that point, Sev, I'll say, I've been talking to you about this for many years, for several years at least, right? A couple years. You and I have had conversations about this concept. The most recent time that you brought this up was when we were going through our housing development plan, which was adopted, I think, 2 years ago or so. 2 years in April, this coming April, I think we adopted that. And here we are. At some point, we need something to act on. And we're going to act on whatever we have in front of us. What we have in front of us right now is what the language that you gave to us. There were some unintended things, as Commissioner Woloski brought up, about you stated that a second floor is required on the current structure. It's not in here. There's also language in here that allows for new development, which would allow them to tear down whatever building is there and build something new. That's what that would allow. I brought up something about the ripple effect of adjoining properties to those properties that are able to be in, that you've said that you want to take a time to be at. So my ultimate question to you, Sev, is if you need more time, how much more time are we looking at? We're back here in 2 weeks. Thanksgiving is going to occur in those 2 weeks, and I'm going to assume, being the family man you are, you ain't going to work over Thanksgiving holiday on a revision to our text amendment change. I'm sure that staff is going to be taking time off, and, I'm not going to spend my Thanksgiving weekend, because I got a daughter coming in from California, by the way, but I'm not going to spend it looking at any revision to a text change. So how much more time are we looking at, or how much more time do you need to clean this up to the point to answer the questions that we have?
I'll do it as fast as necessary. So what is the legal time that's allowed for this application?
I think we have 65 days from the date that we start the public hearing?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's 35 days, but then you can get an extension of up to 65 days.
Okay, so we're talking about 2 months.
From tonight?
Right. Your other option, to be blunt, is you could withdraw, and you can go and do whatever you got to do and come back to us whenever you're ready. But you're the applicant, it's your decision. I'm just saying that as a commission, we're going to act on whatever's in front of us at the time that we're going to make a decision.
That is why, Mr. Chairman and Commission members, I'm asking for a continuance. That way we can address these concerns, and I feel that we can address them within this 65 days period.
Okay,
or
let me propose to the commission that we do this then. Let's leave the public hearing open on this one. We're back here on the 3rd of December, which is 2 weeks from tonight. Let's hear where we are on the 3rd of December. It's the only meeting we have in December, by the way, Seb, so we're not back here again until the new year after that. So that might actually put us at our, close to the limit of the amount of time that we have to act on things. So, time is of the essence right now, and, I would assume that you came forward when you were ready to come forward, and I know you've been talking to others because you had this conversation with Economic Strike Force as well. I'm gonna have to move this along at some point, just so you know. So without objection, if we could just leave the public hearing on this, does anyone object to that? Public hearing open, leaving the public hearing open on this? One last word, Seb. I got a PE, just like you sitting in back, who wants to talk to us about the water department.
Okay. We were on the agenda 2 weeks ago, and it was postponed because the commission had, whatever reason, was postponed.
I think the timeline starts when we open up the public hearing, so the timeline starts tonight.
Okay, so 65 days is a long time.
Well, it's 35 days, and then you have to request an extension for another 30 days, which would give you a total of 60 days. So if you're not going to be ready on the 3rd, I would suggest that you contact staff sometime before that Friday before the 3rd, which is when I like you to get stuff in order so we're all prepared for it and everyone else has an opportunity to prepare for it. If you figure out on that Friday before, I don't have a calendar in front of me, that you're not going to be ready, you could request a 30-day extension at that time, and then we would just grant that 30-day extension probably on the 3rd.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, you can have 65 plus the 35.
Okay. So let's see where you are on the 3rd, and then we'll take it from there. But for
And-
tonight, we'll leave the public hearing open, and we'll move on to the next agenda.
I'll
item.
meet with Dave as soon as he has an opening in his schedule, and we go over all these questions, and we'll clean up the proposal.
This, fair enough, but this is your text amendment change. It is not staff's text amendment change. They, of course, as always, will do the best that they can to help you out, but the onus is on you. You shouldn't rely on them to do the work for you. You have to do
No,
that
I'm
work.
not asking to do the work. I like to go over the language and also the list of comments that the commission made,
Okay.
and as how the best approach it. I'm saying, okay, we
Yep.
could do it this way, and maybe there's a common ground there.
Okay.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
think you
Chairman.
understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Seb. Good to see you. Happy Thanksgiving, and appreciate your time, as I said. So we'll leave that public hearing
Same to
open.
you.
We'll move on to item 9D, Southington Water Department Special Permit Application for construction of a new drinking water treatment building on an existing water treatment site. Proposed structure is to assist the existing water treatment building to provide more water to residents. Who can argue with that? Property located at 177 Dunham Place, zone in R80. This is SPU 659.1. Before you start off, I just want to call the attention of the members of the staff to the memo that was generated by Mr. LaValle a little bit ago with regards to this application. This is an application that was already approved, or a project that was already approved. I think that this represents a slight modification to that original approval. Is that
I don't-
accurate, Dave?
Mr. Chairman, there's no change. They actually went further than the last approval by obtaining the easements that they needed from the residents adjacent to the project, so they're even further along than when it was approved last time.
Okay. So I set the table for you all. Give us your name, social security number, date of birth.
My name
We'll
is
just-
Linda Kagan. Before I start, is it possible to get access to the computer?
It went off, yeah.
Possibly.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
username
you
and
need someone to
password.
open that up for you.
Ah, okay.
Lear, what's your address or what's your affiliation with this project? Just let us know for the record.
So I'm working with Weston and Sampson, and our client is the Southington Water Department.
Okay. Are you a licensed professional engineer, Lynn?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not
So
yet.
EIT then?
Yes.
You're letting her take it for you, huh?
I was forced into this.
Baptism by fire, I'm going to be hard now.
Um, It's not working.
After 3 tries, Linda, you're muted. We're going to have to go old school and have you bring paper copies to us.
Confused with that. All right. That's better. Huzzah.
Look at that. 3rd time's a charm, right?
Yes. So I'm just gonna start while
Yeah,
this
go for
is,
Look at that. As soon as you said that, now your assistant's going to back you up there and bring it up for you. Go, Linda, go.
Okay, so I'm here today to discuss the special permit application for the construction of a new well water treatment building for the Southington Water Department that would benefit the town. This project was previously approved by the Southington Planning and Zoning Commission. However, due to unforeseen circumstances and other permitting delays, construction did not begin during the previous approval timeframe. So, yeah, I believe so. So we're gonna have the drawing shown, and we're gonna show the existing conditions. The existing conditions are as such. It is at 177 Dunham Place. There is an existing drinking water well and treatment building, which includes a building, generator, transformer, fencing and gate, gravel driveway, and there's an existing special use permit for the existing building, which was granted in 1989. There was some clearing completed in the year 2021, which is not shown in the 2019 aerial here. Okay. And then we have the proposed conditions. Which are here. The proposed conditions include a new drinking water well to work in conjunction with the existing well as a redundancy, a new treatment building to treat water from the well, which will be comprised of a CMU building with an asphalt roof, all lighting to face the loading dock, so the lights will not face towards the houses. It will match the existing building, but with layout improvements. And there will be a driveway upgrade, such as a new driveway with a turnaround to allow trucks to park during delivery, and a loading dock to allow easier access. Meanwhile, the existing driveway will be rehabbed to match the new driveway to provide support and replace the older infrastructure. There will also be site improvements. Fencing will be extended and improved to provide security for the public utility. The site will be graded to provide adequate drainage and prohibit ice and erosion issues. And the clearing will still allows over 80 feet of woods and vegetation to the nearest property line. And in the previous application, it was requested that new plantings be added. We have actually added them to the drawing shown here. Over here. And lastly, there will be utility upgrades. Power, gas, telecom, and water lines will be installed to connect back to the existing systems. Do you have any questions?
You all set? Okay, sorry. Any questions for members of the commission? Caleb?
Hi, thank you for coming up and staying with us so late tonight. So you mentioned that there's going to be a loading dock and deliveries. Can you kind of explain to us what kind of deliveries we should be expecting and how frequently that would happen?
All right,
I'm Ben Hipsky. I'm the AP working with Weston Sampson on this project. The deliveries are going to be mostly chemicals. They're typical. The deliveries are already happening at the other building there, so you're not going to see any increased traffic. It'll be trucks, probably, may not be full-size semis, maybe pup trailers, coming in and being delivered, backing into that dock and then pulling out. Shouldn't be any much increase from what's there. As far as daily visits, it should be identical to what's currently there by the water department. Deliveries, Doug could give you a more detailed number of deliveries that they see, but I don't anticipate an increase based on what's there now.
Okay, and then last question, how much more volume of water is going to come out of this?
This well's a redundancy. I don't know if Doug wants to.
Yeah, good evening, Doug Arndt, Superintendent of Water, here at the Southington Water Department. So we've got well 9. This well was installed in the 1970s when the town ran into some real major mess with 2 of our wells in town. It has been the heart and soul of our water department. During regular flows, it can almost do over 50% of what's needed in town. The second well, at the time when we permitted the first one, a lot of times the water department does a backup well. You'll see it, the other wells in town. In fact, this is actually, was permitted as a new well, even though they're in the same well field. The well that Weston and Sampson had put in is for longevity of the well, it's a supersized well screen, where a well screen of a large well normally would be like a 12-inch screen. This actually has a 24-inch screen all the way at the bottom of it. And this well could theoretically produce over 4 million gallons a day, which is a lot of water. The site is currently permitted. Both these wells work in conjunction for 3 million gallons a day peak, and with an average of 2 million gallons a day annual average. So the idea of the water department would be to kind of balance the use of these 2 wells off. There's no impact to the neighbors when that happens. It's purely an impact to the aquifer. The building that we're proposing is physically almost identical to what's already there. It doesn't represent any significant change to the site at all. And we've been working with the neighbors at 124 and 110 that were present at the last time around. Since then, as has been shared, we've had to enter into what we call a sanitary radius to control the area 200 feet from the wellhead. Both neighbors are very, we've developed a very close partnership, and we're working hand in hand with them to do some plantings here and make some other, measures during construction to satisfy any concerns that may have.
Great, thank you very much. That's a lot of Kool-Aid you can mix up with oil water.
Yeah. It's a very important, very important component of our project for the water department. At the time, we were having some issues at well 9. There was a real sense of strong urgency to get this off the ground. Thankfully, we've been able to break through some of the challenges at 9. 9 is still a very productive well, and allow this project to establish those sanitary radius, which took a little bit longer than we originally planned. But the well that they put in may be one of the most productive wells in the entire state. So as I tell everyone in town, it's an asset that's worth waiting on because it should serve the town for many, many years to come.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
You all set? Anyone else from the commission have any questions? Anything else? No? We're all set? All right. Without objection, we'll close the public hearing on this item. Any objection? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on that. Moving on to the business meeting, items 10A, B, and C. Again, per the applicant's request, I'll look for a table on those. Commissioner Woloski?
I make a motion that we table ZC number 579, SPUs 707, and SPR 1891.
Okay, can we get a second?
Second.
Commissioner Sewell with a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 10D, this again is has an open public hearing, so we won't be acting on that. Could we get a table on that, Steve?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table as ZA 618.
Second.
Commissioner Britton with a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 10E, Again, this is Southington Water Department special permit application for construction of a new drinking water treatment building on an existing water treatment site. Proposed structure is to assist the existing water treatment building to provide more water to residents. Property located at 177 Dunham Place, zoned R80 SPU 159.1. Can we get a motion on this?
Can we do E and F together?
One, yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve SPU 659-1.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Chaplinsky with a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, do we need a roll on this?
Yes.
Yeah, can we get a roll then, please?
Commissioner Coles?
Yes.
Commissioner Britton?
Yes.
Commissioner Sewell?
Yes.
Commissioner Carey?
Yes.
Commissioner Chaplinsky?
Yes.
Commissioner Walowski?
Yes.
And Chair Hammersley.
Hammers is a yes, motion carries 7-0. Item 10F, Southington Water Department site plan application for the construction of a new drinking water treatment building, property located at 177 Dunham Place, zone in R80 SPR 1832.1. Anything to add on the applicant's end on this? This is a site plan, this is a site plan for that project.
Yeah, nothing's been added at all. I mean, if that is the question on the commission, it's the same exact plan that was presented before.
And again, per staff's memo, I think that the reason that this is before us is because the 12-month time period as it had expired and they need a reapproval on it, so I don't think there's anything new from what we approved previously on this site. Any discussion, get a motion?
Quick discussion.
Oh, Caleb,
Question maybe for staff, though. The health department pending, is that, they just haven't gotten a chance to get it back to you and?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in on that. If you want to
Thank
say, is the step to their satisfaction, again, they're separate from the town essentially, but it's good to have it in a
it
condition.
would have to happen anyways, I would imagine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but,
It's more of a format.
yeah, we could stipulate that, Caleb, I think
Yeah.
it's fine.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Steve, got a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve SPR 1832.1 with the stipulation that we get health department approval. They get health department.
We got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Sewell with a second. Any discussion? Can we get a roll on this, please?
Commissioner Coles?
Yes.
Commissioner Britton?
Yes.
Commissioner Sewell?
Yes.
Commissioner Carey?
Yes.
Commissioner Chaplinsky?
Yes.
Commissioner Walowski?
Yes.
And Chair Hammersley.
Hammersley's a yes, 7-0, congratulations, nice job. You get a gold star now. Item 10G, release of public improvement bond in the amount of $22,000, living experience, property located at 1268 West Street, SPR 1857.1. Has everything been satisfied on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any discussion on this? Can we get a motion? Steve?
Make a motion to approve SPR 1857.1.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Sewell with a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 10H, release of a post-maintenance bond in the amount of $25,000. Bagnano Estates, property located at Bagnano Drive, S1307. Is this one ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, it's ready. Any discussion? We get a motion on this, Steve?
Make a motion to approve S1307.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Sewell with a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 10I, release a post-maintenance bond in the amount of $35,000, West Valley Development, Frail LLC, property located at Frail Court, S1310. Is this one ready?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we got a bond that's ready to be released. We get a motion? Steve,
Motion to approve S1310.
do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Chaplinsky with a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 11, administrative items. Dave, is there anything?
We do have one that was carried over, Mr. Chairman, from the last meeting. It's for 505 North Main, site plan mod for recycling redemption station within the parking lot. It's a standalone unit. It's mobile. I asked that they put it further back into the site, so it doesn't appear to be a billboard sign up front. We're still waiting to hear back from them, so hopefully by the next meeting.
This is Stop and Shop
Correct.
lot, right?
Yep.
Maybe they could put a variable message sign on that. That's my little dig, but, you know. Okay, item number 12, receipt of new applications. We have a couple on there. You want to talk about those? I think they're pretty self-explanatory, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, one's a storage building, and the other's for a parent-grandparent apartment.
Okay. Anything else before we adjourn? Just wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you all get time to spend time with your families and friends and anyone else that you see fit to spend time with. And eat up, man, eat up. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Coles with a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.